Lying. It's a behavior that gets under our skin more than almost any other. We hear it and we jump straight to moral judgment. They know right from wrong. They're just dishonest. But what if lying isn't really about deceit at all? What if it's a survival behavior, whether you're 5, 15, or 50? If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. In today's session, we're going to talk about why lying is a universal behavior. It doesn't matter across ages and across cultures. We'll look at the survival and emotional functions behind it as well, and the impact of punishment versus empathy on the effects that we have on lying and honesty, and practical ways to respond when lying shows up in your setting. Okay, so first off, we have to recognize that lying is completely natural and normal. We are not the only species that lies. There are certain forms of monkeys that they learn certain calls. So there's a certain species of monkey that they have a call for eagle, they have a call for leopard, and they have a call for snake. And when they make that call, if it's an eagle, then all of the monkeys then kind of go lower into the tree so they don't get taken by the eagle off the top branches. If they do the call for snake, then the monkeys run up into the tree. If they do the call for leopard, they go higher up into the tree. So depending on which call they make, their troop, their pride then moves into a safe place. But what some monkeys have learned to do is do a false call. So let's say all of the other monkeys are down on the floor, they're foraging, they're finding food. And then one monkey gives a call for leopard. And all the monkeys then scutter into the tree, meaning that the monkey who lied gets free pickings of the fruit on the floor. Hey, there's an adaptive element to that lying. And that's what the research shows, that when we find that many people do lie, but it must have a function, it must have a benefit. As I always refer to on my behavior management courses, nobody chooses to behave a way they think in that moment is a bad idea. They must think it's the right thing to do in that moment, even if they afterwards realize maybe it was wrong. So we tend to label somebody as a liar, which doesn't just damage trust, it blocks our understanding. It's one of those labels that really is pervasive. So if a politician is caught lying, we call them a liar. But when they're caught telling the truth, nobody ever labels them as a truther. And you can't be a liar and a truther at the same time. It's possible. But it's one of the most common labels that gets thrown around to people. Once they tell a lie, they become a liar as a whole. So we assume intent when it comes to lie, rather than really exploring the function of why this, why now, which hopefully many of you have been listening to the show for a while will know that's fundamental, being detective rather than judge. So research shows that all children lie. So a study in 2008 from Teller and Lee found that all children lie. It's actually a developmental milestone linked to social cognition. There was quite an interesting experiment they found that they did a test with 3-year-olds and they did a test with 5-year-olds. And they found that in the case of 3-year-olds, some lied, but not all. And what the experimenter would pull out different items behind the child's back, and the child had to ask questions to guess what the item was. And the quicker they guessed, the better the prize that they gained. On the last item, the experimenter then pulls the item out behind the child and then makes an excuse that I'm going to have to leave the room for a moment, but when I come back, you can have a go at guessing. But they obviously gave the instruction, but make sure you don't look. Now, statistically, all children look. All children, if you tell a child don't press that button, they'll do it. But when you tell them don't turn around and look at it, they all looked. The difference is that statistically, only about 50% of the children at 3 years old lied about it, but 100% of children at 5-year-old lied about it. Because once we develop that theory of mind that they don't know what I know and I know things that they don't, straight away, once we've got that concept, once we've got understanding, we're going to try lying. There's an advantage to it in that example, in that experiment, because if I look and know what the item is, but I don't tell you that, I'm going to get a better prize more quickly. So there's an advantage to that behavior. Now, what was really interesting, though, is they repeated this study, and it was looking at corporal punishment. And they explored 2 schools, and I believe the experiment was carried out in Malaysia. And one school had quite an old school corporal punishment kind of humiliation tactic as far as behavior is concerned, where the other school was much more child-centered, a bit more maybe westernized in its views of kind of education and support. And what they did is they repeated that same experiment with the children from these 2 different environments. And what they found is statistically, the children looked the same, but the children from the environment that involved or had corporal punishment took an awful lot longer to look around or to turn around. Now, you might say that's a positive because obviously delayed gratification for longer, but they still looked. It just took them longer. They were more cautious about the person being out of the room, but they still looked. What they found is statistically, the same levels of children lied. But in the group that had experienced corporal punishment or humiliation related to bad behavior, they didn't lie less. They lied better. Now, that's really interesting because it means that there must be an advantage to lying in these circumstances. If I do something wrong and I get in trouble, but if I lie about it, statistically, I might get away with it. And therefore, actually, there's a greater advantage to me lying than there is to me telling the truth when we're involving high levels of punishment or sanctions, consequences, and stuff like that. So punishment doesn't teach kids to lie less, it teaches them to lie better. Because if you need to get better at something to improve your chances of survival and well-being, then you're going to work at it, right? You're going to do more of it. So this was an example of a kid. So it was a ball that got brought behind the child, for instance. And this 5-year-old child goes, it's a ball. And they say, how did you know that? And some would crumble in the previous group. It wouldn't take them long before, looks and give in. But this lad said, well, when you brought it in, I heard a slight squeak. And that made me think of like a trainer on a gym floor. And I thought, oh, that maybe it's a shoe. But then I thought it wouldn't be a shoe because I don't know where to make that sound in that moment when you put it down. So that made me think of a ball, and I thought it was a ball. Now, that's incredibly complex lying for a 5-year-old. So if we think about, we have this concept of shaming when it comes to lying, but we have to understand there is an advantage. So in adults, lying often links to shame, fear of rejection, trying to protect our independence. It's a form of control. Now, if I asked you, like, what color is my t-shirt? And you said it was burgundy and I said it is blue. And you're going to get really annoyed and go, no, it's burgundy. I can see it's burgundy, but I'm still absolutely adamant that it's blue. Well, who's in control? Me. I'm the one controlling it. You're the one getting emotionally affected. So if I control a lie, I control the situation. If you control the truth, you control the situation. So if control is something that helps people to feel safe, then lying's really advantageous. And I've worked with individuals that lying becomes a way of either protecting themselves, but then it becomes so ingrained, it's just what they do. It's the same way as I may eat to protect myself, that I always fold my arms one way around the other, whatever it is, but it becomes a habit. It's just what I do. So there is a few other examples in the circumstances. Some children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, some individuals with dementia, they don't lie. They're sometimes confabulating. They're filling in the missing gaps in their memory with something that makes sense. So if I move something from one side of a room to another, but I don't remember moving it, well, I know that objects don't fly or travel by themselves. And therefore, if I don't remember doing it, my brain's going to tell me, so somebody else must have moved it. So if I say, who's been in moving my stuff, I'm not lying. I'm just trying to make sense of the world as I experience it. And so we have to recognize this is also a normal part. That isn't lying. Now, another form of lying that some of you may have encountered is individuals who tell stories about who they are or what they do. And I've come across this quite often. I remember going to a children's home and this lad was showing me a video of him in a music video. And he was one of the lads in the background wearing a balaclava, rapping. No, it wasn't him. The staff at the home kind of let me know it wasn't him. But he obviously didn't feel that he was worthwhile enough as he was. So he needed to pretend or try and convince people he was somebody more than he was. Now, if you look at it that way, rather than telling him off for being a liar, don't want to help him to believe in himself more. Why would you tell him he's not good enough and he's a liar and he doesn't tell the truth and whatever it is? It's not going to build his self-esteem. We need to help him to feel self-esteem and worthwhile and that he matters in the world just for who he is, rather than who he thinks that you would care about, who you would like. So in short, people don't lie because they're bad. They lie because it meets a need, whether it be safety, whether it be control, whether it be connection or attachment, or it's actually a view of survival. Okay, so what do we do instead? How do we change these labels in our head? Instead of thinking they lied to me, ask, how is this behavior protecting them? What is this behavior benefiting? Why this? Why now? What are they feeling right now? What's wrong for them? Or what might have happened in the past that could be presenting within this lie? What was the behavior to protect them from could mean they're lying to avoid embarrassment. A teenager might lie to keep control in a world that feels unpredictable. An adult might lie because their shame feels safer than truth. An older person might lie because about taking medication to hold on to autonomy. I've already taken it. They may not remember or misremember, or it could be, hey, they don't have a lot of control in this world, but they can control that. Maybe they feel they have to lie to be the only way that they can control a situation. Which is a story I think I told on another event or on a podcast about somebody, a teacher confronting a lad about a football and the lad lying because he said the football was new. We spoke about, or I talked and touched on but was it new to him? Was it the only way he thought he could convince this adult to let him keep this thing that he cared about? I completely understand that lie. So instead, we need to then find out the need, figure out or be curious about the need itself. Then we need to validate it, not shame it, but teach the skill. I can see, if you think it's because I didn't want to get in trouble, you can say, I see you didn't want to get in trouble. Next time, let's try this. It separates the behavior from the person and shows that honesty is a skill, not just a rule. There's a good example that I sometimes refer to that we set up this parenting trap, if you like. If you've got a child who lies habitually, sometimes we set up this thing of, right, how am I going to teach him the importance of telling the truth? And we can do the parables of the boy who cried wolf and stuff like that, but maybe it's not getting through. So we set up this scenario. We find something we know that they broke. You pull them into the room and go, what happened here? And you want them to admit it was them. So you can go, that's okay. Thank you for telling me the truth. And then obviously deal with it accordingly. But instead they go, it wasn't me. So then you try and go, come on, I know it's you. And you might offer suggestions like, look, if you tell me the truth, you won't be in trouble. But if you lie, there's going to be consequences. But they've already lied. So I was saying that a bit too late. Also, if we don't have trust, if we don't have connection, they may not believe you. They might go, it's safer to lie than it is to tell the truth. But sometimes they're lying because it's automatic. They do it without thinking. But now they're caught in the lie. Now to admit that they have lied is too much shame. It's too much loss of control. It's too unsafe. And therefore they're going to stick with that lie no matter what, or it ends up in nothing but a meltdown going, oh, you're always blaming me. You're always saying it was me. It could have been anybody else. So suddenly your whole concept of teaching them has been kicked out the window and they still haven't admitted it was them. So sometimes rather than focus on the lie, just go, hey, I've noticed this. Would you mind helping me get it cleaned up? What do we actually want them to learn? If you break something, there's a consequence. The consequence is somebody has to clean it up. Now, you might get the pushback going, why do I have to prove it wasn't me? Hey, I get it. Maybe it feels unfair. I'm more than happy to help you. We'll do it together and then we'll do this nice. The aim is to teach them that it's that old adage, isn't it? Give them an inch, they take a mile. But sometimes when we're building trust, we need to give them that mile so they learn they only need to take the inch. and then teach them they don't need to lie to be safe. They don't need to lie to be perceived as more, to be perceived as good, to be perceived as worthwhile. Okay. And if they truly believe the lie as well, and if it's somebody with dementia, they believe it, then we're validating, but then looking at and exploring the truth. So we validate the need. We remove the fear factor. If telling the truth always leads to punishment and sanction, people will choose the lie. Just like that Malaysian study showed that harsh punishments breeds better liars, not more honesty. So instead of you're in trouble for lying, try thank you for telling me now. That helps me help you. We can also model honesty with empathy. Adults often white lie to smooth social interactions. So how do you tell the truth kindly? How do I admit to make a mistake without shame? This is the thing when we talk about lying, we have a threshold of what we think is an okay a lie and what isn't. It's okay to send a thank you note to granny even though you're not really grateful. It's okay to tell your partner they look nice when they're going out even though you're not really that keen on their outfit. It's okay to tell kids about Santa Claus. Sorry if any kids listening. I'm not saying it's necessarily a lie. But there's certain lies that we consider to be inappropriate. So how do we teach the difference between a good and a bad lie? We teach repair, not fear. The lie caused harm, focus on repairing the trust rather than shaming. How can we make this right? It shifts the focus from moral judgment to relational repair. Now, I know some of you out there will just be thinking, well, I disagree. Lying is just wrong. Well, deliberate deceit to harm somebody is definitely a maladaptive behavior. But why? You need to understand why is it wrong. Just saying it's just wrong because of your values, beliefs, and attitudes. You need to understand that because of the concept of the boy who cried wolf, look, if you lie to people and they find out, it means they can't trust you. And that can damage relationships. That can impact on your friendships. That means that you can't be trusted. But most lying in care and education is not malicious. It's protective. It's a strategy, not a moral failing. So we're teaching them the impact of it. Again, not shaming, not blaming, going, look, maybe you feel you need to do this, but here are the implications. Here are the consequences of doing this. Let's work together. I know that some of you may be thinking we don't punish it when they keep lying. But again, natural consequences, research says the opposite. Punishment seems to make people lie better. So straight away, follow that learning, follow that rule. Safe, empathic environments increase honesty. If I recognize that mistakes are stepping stones in learning, then why would I need to lie if I've done something wrong? If there's no shame associated with doing something wrong, then why would I need to lie about it? If I'm doing something that I shouldn't, then shouldn't you have taught me the moral benefits of doing it right rather than then me having to lie to cover it up? If I'm lying because I'm misunderstanding the context, then don't you just need to help me to understand the facts? Why would you need to shame and blame me? If I'm lying because I feel I'm not enough, then help me to feel enough. Help me to feel worthwhile. Help me to build my self-esteem. So next time you're faced with a lie, pause. Don't jump to dishonest. Instead, ask why? What's the need? What's the benefit? What's the pain this person is avoiding? Because when we reframe lying as a behavior with a function, we stop trying to punish it and start teaching the skills and safety that make honesty possible. So I want you to think of a recent lie you heard from a child, a colleague, or someone you care for. What survival function might it have served? And how could you respond differently next time? Thanks for listening. And if this episode helped you shift your perspective, please share it with a colleague or parent who's frustrated by lying. Because honesty isn't just about truth. It's about trust. And when people feel safe, the truth has room to grow. See you next time.